Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm reviewing a book which is in family law. It's a fascinating book. It's actually a work of fiction, but it's got a tremendous persuasive influence on the way we go about our business in both the family division and in the family courts generally, both in terms of the legal formal tribunals where we hear the cases and of course mediation. The title of the book is Love, Lose, Live, and it's been written by Mary Banham-Hall, who is an experienced mediator, and it's actually part of something called the Focus Mediation Group on Effective Dispute Resolution. The book's also available as an e-book, and I was very fortunate with my wife to attend the launch of the book last week. I'm recording this in February 2016, now that the embargo has been lifted. Now, my wife wrote the review of the book, and I'm adding to it from what we heard at the launch. The title we've given the review of the book, which should be on the web and in the journal shortly, is A Family Falling Apart, a thoughtful novel by a family practitioner and mediator, and that is what Mary is. Now, any of us who've been involved in family law, as I have for the last 25 years, will know exactly what the problems are and have seen the huge number of changes that have taken place within the legal profession as a whole. That's the judiciary and, of course, the bar and the law society. This is the book. It's a paperback. There is the front, and you can see that is the spine, and then there's some detail on the picture of Mary on the back. And you can see some basic information about the book. Divorce is a roller coaster is the actual subtitle. You can see the name of the organisation there. This review will be appearing in a number of places. This place is dedicated to, the book is dedicated to Martin and others, and who were actually at the launch of this book. And the details about the e-book and all the other information can be found there. Then there's a picture of Mary again. You can see her there, and then you've got the actual preface. There's a foreword, in fact, and then a preface. Lord Wilson did speak. He's a Justice of the UK Supreme Court, and he did speak at the launch. He's the President of the Family Mediators Association. He welcomes this book as a tremendous a contribution to where we might be going with family issues. He obviously comes from the family division and is now on the most senior court in the land. Then there's a preface there. It's a very welcome support he's given for this. And then we talk about the book itself, which is effectively a work of fiction, but dealing with all of the problems that we deal with. And then right at the back is something which we don't like to talk about too often. That's what we have to deal with. That is a very useful little chart on stages of grief. You've got acknowledgements again at the back. There's a lot, and there's suggested reading that goes into to link in with this book for anybody who's interested. There's also a glossary of terms, because sometimes people will not quite know what we're talking about when we use some of these terms rather more loosely, especially terms like mediation and family mediation, which is a specialist area. Then there's civil mediation and so forth. And it does get complex quite quickly. That is again the end of the book. Now, I'm not going to give an awful lot away in this review, because I think you should read the book. It runs to just over 300 pages, and you will get a fairly good idea. If any of you have ever been involved in, as I have, in a wide range of family cases, an awful lot of what's in here will become very, very relevant to you very, very quickly, and you will probably anticipate some of the sorts of outcomes your experience will dictate to you is what will happen. Because the one thing, and I'll stress this now and not say anything else afterwards, the one thing that's always important is the role of the child in all of this. And we've had, certainly with what I heard from Lord Wilson and others, at long last, a bit of a change of attitude on the senior judicial benches about what the views of the children are when it comes to a breakdown of the family unit. Now, it's been a long time coming. and I'm very glad to see that it's now arrived, because I've done a number of cases over the years where the attitudes were not, frankly, conducive to getting a proper positive result. And I say that very strongly because it's taken me 20 years just to even try to get some people who, in my view, have had the wrong attitudes all the way through, trying to work out what we do in future and adopt a sensible approach, which is to try to take this matter outside and away from the direct formal legal courtroom. That's where we're going, and I'm hoping we'll see a lot more changes in the next decade. Now, enough of the soapbox and statements. That's what came out partly of the launch of this book. But what is the book about? This is what we say. Mary Banham-Hall, a family solicitor and mediator, has written a novel about a family falling apart. As an advisor in cases of marital breakup, she has over the years helped countless clients through their divorces and separations. Quote, "It is through observing them," she says, "that I gained the experience and understanding to write this story." Thank you, Mary, for sharing that with us, because I think it is important. Anyone involved in this area will have their own understanding of what has happened. I certainly do, and that's why I'm grateful. Interestingly, Lord Wilson, who's a justice, as I say, of the United Kingdom Supreme Court, comes from the family division, has written a laudatory foreword to the book, referring to the advantages of family mediation for separating or divorcing couples. Family mediation, he writes, has vast untapped potential for saving costs, as well as for procuring an outcome more satisfactory for the couples than we judges are likely to devise. Absolutely right. And I'm glad he said it. He said it at the launch, and I fully endorse what he said. That is going to be the way forward. Nonetheless, referring to Mary's afterword, he mentions her point that the courts are the correct and in many cases the ultimate destination for those choosing to divorce. And this is where the balance comes in. As mediation is not binding, you can't get a divorce except by ending up in court. It may well be that those days will change as well. We'll have to wait and see. I suspect there are very substantial changes going to take place in the next 5 to 10 years on the whole way in which we do business, in terms of turning up in court as opposed to using a computer or a terminal. And I do think that those days are nearly on us with artificial intelligence developments. So do be aware of where we're moving, because that, notwithstanding all of that, you've still got the problems of dealing with the warring parties. In other words, client handling. Now, bearing in mind what I've said, that mediation is probably the better path to resolving disputes, whether or not the final destination is going to be the court of law. This book is entitled Love, Lose, Live. One would assume, of course, that this is a deliberate reference to Elizabeth Gilbert's best-selling memoir of 2006, Eat, Pray, Love, which the author tries to find herself through world travel and Eastern philosophy following a marital breakup. Be that as it may, this book we're reviewing today is in fact standing alone on its own excellent merits. Later, of course, the film Love, Lose, Live, Eat, Pray, Love, was made into a film with the excellent Julia Roberts. Miss Gilbert's book, of course, incidentally eliciting some fascinating comments when first published. The New York Post savaged it as narcissistic New Age reading. The New York Times, being a little more gentle, called it irresistible, but noted that Gilbert omitted the confusion and unfinished business of real life. That's as may be. That was Eat, Pray, Love. We're dealing with Love, Lose, Live, and the journey is different, if I can put it that way. And as I said, I'm not going to give you a spoiler. Read the book and then you get some understanding. Anybody involved, as I said, I'll repeat it, involved in this area of jurisprudence will understand exactly what I'm saying. Mary Banham-Hall's novel, on the other hand, cannot be criticised on that score, i.e. the score of criticism that Julia Roberts' film and Gilbert's book did, sparing very little of the confusion and angst that accompanies marital discord. Mary narrates, often in minute detail, the gradual and inexorable erosion of the relationship between the once devoted Beth and Simon, and the appalling emotional damage inflicted on their 3 younger children. As I say, without going into details, you read it. You will have read many witness statements and be aware of the saga that unfolds. Being a mediator as well as a solicitor, Mary makes no overt judgments, quite rightly in my view, about the attitudes and antics of her characters. And I do say this very strongly. That's the way you must behave whenever you do any family matters, because otherwise you can get dragged into it. It's bad enough as it is, but you must have the detachment all the way through, otherwise it's really difficult. And the mission here for Mary is to describe and explain rather than take sides. That's what you have to do, because it's fatal if you take sides. It's very obvious quite quickly what's going on. You can't take sides, it's as simple as that. The judge, if anything, is going to take sides because he's going to spot who's telling the bigger lies, the bigger pork is than the other side. And that's really up to him or her as the judge. And you as the advocate, fortunately, don't have to do that. Just remember the role of the mediator in this as well, and how the balance has to be there, and the distance as well. Mary portrays the husband, Simon, as tall, reasonably handsome, successful, busy, affluent, and away all the time. Well, we've heard that one before. But on returning home to his gorgeous wife Beth and adoring kiddies, Simon comes across as well tired, also as a whinging, self-pitying, self-absorbent, petulant, hypercritical, tedious, tiresome, crashing bore. Well, I wonder why. Probably exhausted. Many oblivious to his wife's Herculean but not always successful efforts to create a happy home, he starts wondering why she seems to have fallen out of love with him and he with her. But hey, what's a great excuse to run off and commit adultery, which they both eventually do. Rings some bells, doesn't it, with any form of witness statement that you might be reading or have read. Despite all this, a satisfactory settlement is eventually arrived at thanks to the couple's decision to undergo mediation. This is the selling point of the book, the story. But the book doesn't end there. It provides an alternative ending which illustrates what would have happened if Beth and Simon had gone straight to court rather than mediate. The result, predictably, is utter disaster. The author has made her point, and I'm glad she has, because frankly I think it's been too long in coming that we have not addressed these issues in the same way. And I have to say, it was said at the launch, roundabout ways sometimes, but it was said that this applies not just to family jurisdictions. It applies elsewhere too. And in fact, that may well be the way that we go with the legal profession. We can take matters away from the court, so be it. I know that the judges would like to do that. And I realise that this is actually the underlying message, not just about the family jurisdiction and this area of mediation, but more generally, I think, where you've got to go. Let me end by saying this. Family lawyers and certainly mediators will be intrigued by this book. Yes, I have been too, and thank you. Which will, of course, also no doubt attract much comment and interest, which it has at the moment by the comments I'm seeing on the web, in the journals and elsewhere, and obviously our contribution is one. The final word goes to Lord Wilson, who said it's a wonderful advertisement for family mediation. And your lordship, thank you, you're absolutely right. This is a book which I think is an important book for everybody to look at. There it is again, spine and then the back. Picture of Mary there. And if we just open it up in the middle, the standard text all the way through, there's quite a large amount of, obviously, of actual quotes of various views being expressed all the way through. So what you do have right at the beginning, again, I don't want to give too much away, is do have a look at the foreword from Lord Wilson and the preface which Mary has produced, because you have got you've got quite a lot of scene setting, and then you do have a certain amount of dialogue as well. The dialogue I think is very well done, and then there are a certain number of what I would describe as legal points that have been put in. Again, I don't want to show too much there, but because you should read it, but you will see that what Mary has done is she's put in the sorts of things that you would, if you've been handling a case like this in a court, you would actually see amongst the papers. Thank you to all concerned for this book. I think it's an important contribution as we move forward with our legal processes. We're entering a new age, I think, very shortly. New generation of computers, new generation of approaches, and a new generation of people coming up looking for something different from the way we've done things in the past. We in the West lead the way with this. There will be obviously other countries and other types of jurisdiction where they will see things very differently. But I think we can at least be pathfinders towards perhaps a new way of sorting out, which is a problem which is actually a big problem within our own free and democratic society. And that is, of course, the breakup of relationships. Thank you, Mary, and thank you to everybody concerned. It was a very important launch. It's an important book, and it's something I think all aspiring family practitioners should read. Thank you. Bye-bye.